500 years ago, someone buried something in the soil, and it's still feeding plants today. The strange part? It's not rare, it's not expensive, it's something you can make yourself. Somewhere in the Amazon, there's a patch of ground that has been producing food for 5 centuries straight. No fertilizer runs, no irrigation system, no supply chain, just soil. And here's what makes it strange. The land surrounding it is nearly dead, thin, acidic. Nutrients wash out with every rain. The Amazon is actually one of the worst environments for long-term agriculture. But this patch? Plants grow bigger, faster, and healthier season after season without anyone adding anything to it. Scientists found it and couldn't explain it at first. They called it Terra Preta, dark earth. And the more they studied it, the clearer one thing became. Whoever made this soil understood something about the ground beneath their feet that we have completely lost. What they buried wasn't exotic, it wasn't rare, it was something you can make tonight, in your backyard, with wood and fire. It costs less than $5. A bag of garden biochar at a hardware store runs $30 to $50 and treats a small patch. What you're making here costs under $5 and covers an entire raised bed. It works in a raised bed, in a container, in a grid-down situation where no store is open and no delivery is coming, and once it goes into your soil, it stays there, not for a season, not for a few years, for decades. I'm going to show you exactly what it is, how to make it, and how to use it correctly, because there's a specific mistake most people make that cancels the entire effect. The whole process takes about an hour and a half from lighting to cooled biochar. I've done it a dozen times now. The first time, I ruined the entire batch in the last 5 minutes because I didn't know what I was looking for. I'll make sure that doesn't happen to you. Before I explain why it works, one thing. There's a 5-minute window inside that hour where most people ruin the entire batch. I'll show you exactly when that window opens and what to do when it does. We'll get to that. But first you need to understand why this works, because once you see this, you'll never look at soil the same way again. This next part takes 2 minutes. Don't skip it. Because if you don't understand what's happening inside the soil, you'll make the exact mistake that turns this whole thing into a waste of an afternoon. Most people think fertilizer works by feeding plants directly. You pour something in, the plant eats it. Done. That's true for synthetic fertilizers, but it's also why they stop working the moment you stop buying them. Biochar is different. It doesn't feed your plants, it feeds your soil. Here's the simplest way to understand it. Imagine your soil is a city. Plants need resources, water, nutrients, microbial activity. But if the city has no infrastructure, no roads, no storage, no buildings, resources just pass through. Nothing stays, nothing accumulates. Biochar builds the infrastructure. It turns your soil from something that loses everything into something that holds everything. At a microscopic level, biochar is riddled with tiny pores, thousands of them per gram. Those pores trap water. They hold nutrients that would otherwise wash away with the first rain. And most importantly, they create housing for the microbes that actually feed your plants. More microbes, more nutrient cycling, better soil, every single season. That's why Terra Preta is still fertile today. The biochar those ancient civilizations buried didn't break down. Carbon is incredibly stable in soil. It just sat there for centuries, quietly building a better environment for everything that grows above it. Now here's where most people get confused. They think biochar is just charcoal, like the stuff you use on a grill. It's not. Regular charcoal is made fast, at uncontrolled temperatures with additives and chemicals. It can actually harm your soil. Biochar is made slowly, at the right temperature, from clean organic material with no oxygen reaching the core. That process is called pyrolysis, and that's the detail that changes everything. The good news? You don't need a lab to do it. You need a metal barrel, some dry wood, and I'll show you exactly how. Here's what I like about this method. The materials list is almost offensively simple, but before I give it to you, there's one material that looks completely safe and silently ruins the entire batch. Most people don't find out until after they've already added it to their soil. I'll tell you exactly what it is at the end of this list. 1 metal barrel or steel drum. A 55-gallon drum is ideal. A 5-gallon metal bucket works for smaller batches. You can find used drums at hardware stores, farm supply stores, or often free at food processing facilities. A cost, $0 to $15. Dry hardwood. Branches, scrap lumber, fallen wood from your property. The key word is dry. Green wood produces inconsistent results and excess smoke. Hardwood gives you denser, more porous biochar than softwood. Cost, free. A metal lid or steel plate to control oxygen at the critical moment. An old baking sheet works fine. Cost, usually free. Water to quench the burn. That's it. Total investment, under $5 if you source smart. Now, the material to avoid, pallets. Specifically, pallets stamped with the letters MB, that stands for methyl bromide, a fumigation chemical. It looks like regular wood. It burns like regular wood. But the contamination doesn't burn off. It goes straight into your biochar and from there directly into your soil and your food. Check every piece of wood before it goes in. One bad piece contaminates the whole batch. Use clean, untreated wood. That's the only rule that matters here. Now let's burn. The method we're using is called TLUD, top lid updraft. It sounds technical. It's not. It's just a logical way to burn wood with limited oxygen. Here's why it matters. When wood burns with full oxygen, like a regular bonfire, you get ash. Full combustion, nothing left. What we want is incomplete combustion. We want the wood to cook from the outside in, releasing gases but leaving a carbon skeleton behind. That carbon skeleton full of pores is your biochar. For that to happen, the wood needs to reach between 400 and 700 degrees Celsius. Below that, you get partially charred wood that won't work right. Above that, you burn through the carbon and get ash. And the TLUD method hits that window naturally, no thermometer needed. TLUD controls that process naturally, and it's the most beginner-friendly method available. Step 1. Load your barrel. Fill your metal drum about 2/3 full with dry wood pieces. Aim for chunks roughly the size of your fist or smaller. Smaller pieces give you more surface area and better, more consistent biochar. Don't pack it too tight. You need some airflow. Step 2. Light from the top. This is the key difference from a regular fire. You light the material at the top, not the bottom. Use kindling, newspaper, or dry leaves right at the surface. Get a solid fire going on top. As the top layer burns, it creates a layer of hot coals that moves downward slowly through the material below. The burning front descends through the barrel. The wood below gets cooked by heat and gases, not by open flame. This is pyrolysis happening in real time. Step 3. Watch the smoke. Here's your best indicator of what's happening inside. At first, thick white smoke. That's moisture leaving the wood. Normal. Then it shifts to a thin, almost blue-gray smoke. That's the pyrolysis gases burning off cleanly. This is the phase where biochar is actively forming. When the smoke drops dramatically and the fire seems to quiet down, that's your signal. The burn front has reached the bottom. The process is almost complete. Here's the most common mistake, and it ruins everything. People let it keep burning. Once the pyrolysis phase ends, if you leave it open, oxygen floods back in and turns your biochar into ash. Gray, powdery, useless ash. You have a window of maybe 5 to 10 minutes. That's it. My first batch, I saw the smoke drop and thought the fire just needed more time. I walked inside for 10 minutes, came back to a barrel of gray powder. That's 2 hours of work gone. The signal feels anticlimactic, like the fire is dying. It is. That's exactly when you move. Step 4. Quench it. The moment you see that smoke drop, kill the fire. Put the metal lid on tight to cut oxygen, or carefully pour water over the material. Water is faster and more reliable. Spread the quenched material out. Let it cool completely. What you'll see? Black, lightweight, angular pieces of carbon, not gray, not powdery, black and solid with a slightly glassy surface. That's biochar. Now, can you just throw it in your garden bed right now? No. And this is the detail most people skip and then wonder why it doesn't work. Before you add biochar to your soil, you have to charge it. Raw biochar is like an empty sponge. It has all the structure, all the pore space, but nothing inside. Put it straight into your garden and it will actually pull nutrients away from your plants while it saturates itself for weeks. I skipped this step the first time I got it right. Figured compost was compost and biochar was biochar and mixing them was optional. The seedlings stalled for almost 3 weeks. I thought the whole method was overhyped. It wasn't. I had just put an empty sponge in the ground and let it drain everything around it. Charging means filling those pores before it goes in the ground. The simplest method: mix your biochar with compost. A ratio of 1 part biochar to 3 parts compost works well. Let it sit together for 2 to 4 weeks. The biochar absorbs the microbial life, the moisture, and the nutrients from the compost. Now it's loaded and ready to give, not take. If you don't have compost, soak it in diluted liquid fertilizer, worm castings, tea, or aged manure water. Any rich organic liquid works. How do you know when it's ready? Charged biochar smells like damp earth, not like ash. The color deepens and evens out across the surface. If you squeeze a handful, it holds moisture without dripping. Those are your signs. Once charged, apply it. For a standard raised bed, work in roughly 1 inch of charged biochar into the top 6 inches of soil. Mix it in. You don't need more than that. One thing to know, biochar is slightly alkaline. If your soil is already on the alkaline side, go lighter on the application. A quick pH test before you start is worth the 2 minutes it takes. What happens next? First season, better water retention. Soil that used to dry out in 2 days holds moisture significantly longer. By the second season, microbial populations in the soil measurably increase. Plants access nutrients more efficiently. Growth improves. By the third season, your soil is fundamentally different. And from that point forward, you're no longer starting from zero. You don't reapply every year. You don't buy anything on repeat. One application builds structure that lasts decades. For preppers, the math is simple. One 55-gallon drum burn produces enough biochar to treat a 4x8 raised bed. A full drum of dry hardwood yields roughly 20 to 30% of its original weight in biochar. 10 kilos of wood in, 2 to 3 kilos of finished biochar out. Run 4 burns and you've covered a serious growing operation. The wood is free. The time is an afternoon. A few things people always ask. The burn is safe as long as you treat it like what it is, an open fire. Non-windy day, water within arm's reach, eyes on it the whole time during the pyrolysis phase, never in an enclosed space. The gases coming off during the burn are combustible. A cleared flat area away from structures is all you need. If you don't have a 55-gallon drum, a 5-gallon metal bucket with a few holes drilled near the base works fine. Less volume, same quality biochar. I've seen people do it with a rocket stove setup using 2 bricks and a metal can. The method adapts to what you have. Containers and pots work well too. Mix the charged biochar at about 10 to 15% of your total container volume. It solves 2 problems at once: drainage and moisture retention, which is exactly what most containers need. For wood, hardwoods give you the best result. Oak, hickory, fruitwoods. They produce denser, more porous biochar. Softwoods like pinework, just less consistent. Whatever you use, it needs to be clean and untreated. That's the one rule that doesn't bend. Here's what makes this really interesting. The civilizations that created Terra Preta didn't have a soil science degree. They didn't have pH meters or fertilizer ratios. They were working with what the forest gave them: wood, fire, organic waste, and they figured out something that modern agriculture is only now starting to take seriously. Researchers at Cornell, at Oxford, and at agricultural institutes across Europe are studying biochar as a large-scale climate and food security solution. The carbon it locks into soil stays there for hundreds of years. It reduces the need for synthetic fertilizers, it improves drought resistance, and you can do it with a metal barrel and scrap wood. That gap between what ancient people knew, what modern science is rediscovering, And what you can do in your backyard this weekend is the whole point. You don't need a supply chain for this. You don't need electricity. You don't need a store to be open. You need wood, you need fire, and you need to quench it at the right moment. The rest is patience, a soil that keeps building instead of resetting every season. Biochar fixes the soil, but soil is just one piece. If you want to build a complete backyard food system around the same logic, simple inputs, low cost, results that compound over time, there's a guide called the Backyard Miracle Farm System that shows how to put it all together from scratch. The link is in the pinned comment. And if this kind of content makes sense to you, there's more on the channel. The next video is on the screen. See you there.